Hello, 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 everyone. Very nice to be with you again today. Welcome to another episode of the Black Beauty Activist podcast, where we discuss critical conversations to disrupt westernized beauty standards and raise the consciousness and confidence of the Black community. I am your host, Dr. Tameka Ellington. For those that don't know me, I am a scholar, empowerment speaker, and an author. In today's episode, we will be discussing misogynoir and Black hair politics. And I just got asked today from someone, so what exactly is there to study about Black hair? I've been actually asked that throughout my entire career. What exactly do you study when you study Black hair? And my response is everything from social identity to content analysis of African hairstyles. Any of all of that, any and all of that can be researched. Black hair is thus the essence of Black culture and Black love. It is the strife and triumph of Black people. The Black community has been brainwashed to revere 3A, B, and C hair as a status symbol, and there is everything to study about Black hair. We all know the term misogyny, the dislike, contempt, or prejudice against women, but thanks to researchers such as Dr. Moya Bailey, we now have a term that is a representation of the intersection of sexism and racism. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I was walking down the street going towards my friend's house, and I hear this young man holler out of his window as he's driving down the street, and he called me dyke. A young man screaming dyke at me right after I had gone and done what we call in the natural hair community, we call it a big chop. For those of you that don't know, that's when you go from having your straight hair to having natural hair. And the way that you do that is by taking it all off. So you cutting all the chemical processed hair off down to the root where you have your natural hair. So I did a big chop in 1998. And back then, doing the big chop was not a very popular thing. And so the word dyke that I got as a result of that was not really surprising to me. It was still shocking, but it was not surprising. Society has conditioned us, and from the very beginning, conditioned us to believe that Black women's beauty and sexuality is measured by the length of her hair. It's time to wake up, people, and know that true beauty is not a singular, solitary idea. It is not in a box. And my next guest is very familiar with the plight of Black hair and is the author of the article Misogynoir, Black Hair, Identity Politics, and the Multiple Black Realities. Welcome, Dr. Maria DeLongoria to the Black Beauty Activist podcast.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you for being here. And I'm going to read your bio so that everybody knows about the amazing work that you've been doing. Dr. Maria is founder and owner of the Quiet Storm Consulting LLC, which is a consulting firm that focuses on higher education, career coaching, historical research, and related presentations. She is also currently chair and associate professor of history in the Department of Social and Behavioral Sciences at Medgar Evers College at the City University of New York. In addition to her professorial line, Dr. Dr. DeLongoria has held various faculty and senior level administrative positions at both 2-year and 4-year colleges in Maryland, New York, Virginia, including New York City and state university systems. This includes that of Dean, Associate Vice President of Academic Affairs, and Executive Dean and Campus CEO. And so for over the last 15 plus years, Dr. Maria has presented and published on racial and ethnic identity, race and gender discrimination in higher ed, and the lynching of Black women. She's been invited to speak on racial issues, leadership, and participate in diversity workshops, the development of curriculum, and teaching of courses related to the experiences and advancement of people of African descent in the diaspora, both past and present, reflect her commitment to supporting libertorial education. As a respected administrator, Dr. Maria has received several awards in recognition of her commitment to education, students, and community. This includes the Education Award from the Suffolk County chapter of the National Council of 100 Black Women, the Suffolk County Martin Luther King Commission Service Award, and the Phenomenal Woman of Power Award from the Metropolitan College in New York City. She's also received several recognition awards for her work with students. Dr. Maria is a proud graduate of Virginia State University, where she got her BA, Morgan State University, where she received her MA, and the University of Missouri Columbia, where she holds a PhD. She also holds a Women's in Education Leadership certificate from Harvard University Graduate School of Education. And lastly, Dr. Maria is a reoccurring panelist on the cable TV show Brooklyn Savvy, which gives voice to social issues from women's perspective. Additionally, she has provided commentary related to historical topics and current affairs on Fox Live News, News 12, WBLS New York Radio, WNYC News, and Live with Sunjay in the Hot Seat, ZJB Radio, 664 Connect MNI. And again, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Dr. Maria to the Black Beauty Activist podcast. And we're going to jump right on into this interview. I'm so excited. This is going to be an interview I think that will change so much about your perspective about what we know about Black hair politics. A lot of the topics that Dr. Maria discusses in her article are topics that people just don't want to talk about. And so my first question to you, Dr. Maria, is just to please tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you started your journey as a researcher.
Okay, thanks. Let me start by saying I'm going to have to shorten that bio. I was like, get me to the end. Take some of that stuff out.
But you know what, though? Whenever I invite someone, if they send me the bio, I read it the way that they send, because I don't believe in cutting people's accomplishments short.
I appreciate that, but
yes.
I'm going to have that shortened a little bit. But so you asked a little bit about me and my story and how I got to do what I do and why I do what I do, right?
Yeah.
So, I guess I was born and raised in Queens. Parents, one from Brooklyn, one from the Bronx. My father's from Jamaica via the Bronx. My mother's family is from the New York area and from North Carolina. You know, the typical pattern of Black families that moved from, migrated from the South to the North in the early 1900s. They were a part of that. So grew up city girl all the way. Have one brother, 3 sisters, blended family in that my sisters are from my dad's previous life before my mom. And I guess that's it. And a lot of nieces, nephews, families, cousins. And I didn't plan on being a researcher. I kind of fell into it. I think sometimes we have these great plans for our journeys, and then life tells us and the universe tells us that's not what you're going to do. You're going in a different direction, right?
Absolutely.
And sometimes we fight it, but then sometimes, and I fought it for a little bit, and then I'm just like, okay, I'm not going to fight this anymore. I'm just going to let this rock and see where I end up. And I ended up where I was supposed to be, right? And it was the thing about the research part is that I ended up as a history major in undergrad after having several majors, after having dropped out of school. I went to school, dropped out, went back, had a baby, dropped out, had a baby, went back. And when I went back to school, I said, what's going to get me out of here the quickest? And I was in a history class, and actually a philosophy class, and the professor said, you should really consider philosophy. And I'm like, oh no. He said, just come by the department and sit and talk to me. So I went by the department. He gave me the at that time everything was paper still, right? Paper guides on what I had to take. And I looked at the history degree, and it had all these open electives. So I could transfer in all 30 credits that I had taken from here and from here and from here. I could transfer them all in and cut a year off. I said, well, that's my major right there.
Right.
And then as I'm taking courses, though, I really got, and I didn't like history in high school. So it's for me, it's just something was wrong with it, right? Something was right about the history that they gave us. But as I got more into specialized classes, and I would read things, and things that didn't sound right made me want to go look and find stuff. Something had to be more. There had to be more there. And that's really how I got into the digging aspect of doing the research.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting what you say about the fact that our career oftentimes chooses us or finds us, or the universe tells us, you know, what we're supposed to be doing. I would have never guessed that I would have been a researcher either.
Yeah.
I started off, my background is actually in fashion design. So I started
Okay.
off many years as a fashion designer. And I thought that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And the universe told me otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I have a bunch of people I grew up with, and sometimes you kind of feel like the odd person out because people
Yeah.
graduate high school, they go to school, they do their 4 years, they graduate, they get
Yeah.
a job, and here I was start and stop and start and stop, and you're not
Hmm.
supposed to do that, especially when so and so's kids are doing this and doing that, right? And so it's funny though because let's say they graduated from high school at 21, right? They
Yeah.
graduated on time, right?
Right.
Um, by the time they were in the late 20s, they're going back to school for different careers, or they're doing something totally outside of their field that they didn't
Hmm.
need a degree for. And
Yeah.
I'm sitting there just giggling. I'm like, oh, so we're at the same place now, aren't we?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Did I,
Yeah. Yeah.
we still ended up in the same place.
Yeah. For Black women,
Mhm.
hair can be as much a political as well as a celebration of who they are. It can be a vehicle of empowerment, especially when occupying hostile spaces. Women of African descent are placed into categories of Blackness based on their hair, style, texture, and color, and treated accordingly. This is an excerpt from your article, which I thought was written beautifully.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the way that you describe this Blackness based on their hairstyle, texture, color, and treated accordingly,
Hmm.
because that really sums up everything, right? So, can you kind of break down these concepts that we call Black hair politics for those people that should know but probably don't know?
Sure, no problem. This whole idea of black hair politics, and it we embrace it way more than we should. We tout it, and that whole scale, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned in the
Oh,
introduction
yeah.
that 2A, 3B, 4C products for this, products for that. If you got this and you got that, and it's interesting because that scale is something that divides us even more
Oh,
than
yeah.
we already are.
Yeah.
And people get so attached to what kind of hair they want to have that, oh, no,
Mhm.
no, I don't have 4C hair. I have 3B hair, or I have who would ever look at my hair. It's not like that. And people run from that one end of the spectrum and try to
Mhm.
go completely to the other end. And
Yeah.
that spectrum not only applies to hair, it applies to complexion, right?
Mhm.
And it applies to attitude, it applies to behavior.
Yeah.
People run up and down, and people will fall anywhere in between. And with on the other aspects, like with behavior and things like that, you can bounce from one end to the other easily. It's not
Yeah.
so easy to do it with the physical aspects.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's where people really find the most challenges. And part of that is because society, right, colonialism, enslavement has made it more desirable to be that. I think there is no 1A, I don't think. It's like two, starts at two or something. I think one maybe is bald, right? Um,
Well, one is white straight hair. That's what one is.
okay, see,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought that was two.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's people want to be as close to that ideal as possible.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's from colonialism, that's from brainwashing, that's from the trauma that is carried on year after year after year after year in families.
Yeah.
um the little comments that you hear that you're not supposed to hear but you are supposed to hear, right? Because
Mhm.
they want to send you a message that that's not what you want to be.
Right.
um those things carry on and they translate into our everyday worlds and our everyday interactions. And it's not just us, it's how other people see us, and it's how other
Absolutely.
people treat us. It's how other people make assumptions about us, right?
Yeah.
People who have, let's say, hair on one end of the spectrum are often seen as more threatening,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
as more angry,
Oh, yeah.
as your story dictated,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
as unclean, right?
Mhm.
Even
Yep.
though it has nothing to do with it, I think
Yep.
Black women are the cleanest people that I've ever seen, particularly
Yeah.
when it comes to our hair, right?
Right.
We don't want anybody criticizing or judging us by what's on our hair or what it
Yeah.
looks like. And
Absolutely.
you know, I end that piece, like, I realized there are no bad hair days. There are no more bad hair days, right?
Mm.
It's your hair,
Yeah.
and it does what it does. It's as temperamental as we are,
Yeah.
So we get into the idea of saying, oh, it's behaving today or it's not behaving. No, it behaves every day. It's just it kind of reflects our attitudes also, right? And
Oh, that's deep. Yeah.
yeah, and the moods we're in and the energy that we're projecting. But a lot
Yeah.
of people don't take that into account. So going back though to this idea of the politics, there in even if we don't even talk about the scale per se, right? Because the white folks know about the scale because they're on the scale.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, they may even design part of that scale. But in terms of, let's say, employment, right? There's certain styles of hair that are acceptable.
Yeah.
And there are certain styles of hair that are outlawed. I talk about that a little bit in the article. I think I referenced the airline case, right? I think it was American Airlines that I think it was American that fired a woman, right? That she could not have extensions in her hair, right? And there was another case that I talked about where the woman couldn't have blonde hair.
Yeah.
It was okay for the white employee to color her hair.
Yeah.
Right? Blue, pink, purple. But the black woman could not color her hair blonde because she was told it was not natural for her. Number one, they didn't understand the history of blackness and the interactions between black people and white people in the United States.
Right.
There are plenty of black people with blonde hair, natural blonde hair, right?
Right.
But she wasn't allowed to have blonde hair. And so there are these laws and these behaviors that are targeting just black women, right?
Yeah.
Later on, black men will fall into those categories later on as they start to embrace, different hairstyles and do different things to their hair. When you see the popularity of having locks, right, spread, then you'll see more men affected by these.
Right.
But in the beginning, it was just women. If we look at the look at when enslaved people were being brought over, one of the things that the slave catchers used to talk about, and the slave masters, they used to describe their hair, right? They used to talk about how dirty it was and how nasty it was, and they would often cut it off. And cutting it off was a way of disconnecting, right? Not just women but men as well, from their tribes, from their homeland, from their culture, from their social status, right?
Absolutely.
Because on the continent, right, we're talking about a period where there was a lot of pride taken in having the natural hair, where your hairstyle represented where you were in life. For example, a bald girl meant that she was maybe unavailable, or in some cultures she was ready to be married, right? But she wasn't married yet. Certain styles depicted certain things.
Also depicted status. Like if you were the daughter of a chief, or if you were a chief yourself, or maybe you were a warrior, you had to wear your hair a certain way. So you're absolutely right.
And so a way of, and certain tribes or nations, whatever word we like better, they had certain styles, and you could tell what they belonged to, right, by those styles. And so during the Middle Passage, during the entrapment and the capture and the Middle Passage, and then the later sale, it was deliberately, right, the hair was deliberately altered, cut, so that people couldn't identify people of their own clans, right? And so people did not know who was next to them or who was in the cabin with them. They tried to alter any kind of way they had to communicate, or for people to identify with one another. They while they were successful on one hand, right, they weren't successful on the other hand, because a lot of those things we still carry. When we look at the time where we were here and enslaved, then our hair was used for different things. Sometimes they were, certain braid patterns were certain roadmaps. We used to use our hair for a lot of things. Some of the crops that we have here that are indigenous to the continent were because seeds were brought over sometimes.
That's right. Yeah. We would braid the hair and put the seeds right in the hair to disguise them. And absolutely. Absolutely.
And so as we jump forward, right, when slavery ended, one of the things Black men wanted to do was protect Black women. And in protecting Black women, the idea was that they had to present as presentable, as respectable, right? This is where respectable politics comes in. They had to be as respectable as the white women. And part of that was dressing and appearing in ways that didn't offend white people. And that included our hair.
Yeah. And skin tone. And skin tone.
And skin tone.
Yeah.
Definitely skin tone.
Yeah.
And if you couldn't change your skin tone, then it was even more important that you changed your hair, you changed your speech, you changed your walk. You had to do everything else to be less intimidating or less scary to the white folks.
Oh, wow. And, unfortunately, that is still happening.
Absolutely.
Today. We still, as many, if you are a woman, a Black woman, and you're watching this, I'm sure you've come across at a time in your life where someone have deemed you angry or deemed you aggressive. I've actually had people tell me that I'm intimidating. I was a part of I'm sure you've heard of Toastmasters. So I was a part of a Toastmasters group in my city, and a white gentleman that was in the group. I was the only Black person in the group. And I stood up and I presented in front of the group. And after my presentation, he said, my recommendation is that you try to come off a little less intimidating. Like, okay. Just, we can go on and on. We can go on and on about that one.
Out of a presentation.
Out of a speech. Out of a speech.
And some of those things, right? Depending on your hair, complexion has a lot to do with it. And then if your hair doesn't match your complexion, they think it's supposed to.
Wow.
Whole nother dynamic.
Wow.
So one of your things you mentioned you wanted to talk about, and I don't know if we just haven't gotten to it yet, but one of the reasons I got into this whole thing about hair was because I was so confused by mine. I was made to feel so many different ways because of mine. And people would say things like, well, let me start with, my mother has very straight hair. She has like Indian straight hair.
Okay.
From her Cherokee ancestor. It somehow popped out in my grandfather and popped out in her. So she didn't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
Right? She had no clue. And she combed my hair the way she combed her hair. And that meant taking a comb, starting here, and running it all the way to the back. And my hair was much longer, much fuller. It had a tighter curl because, as we get older and as we gray, our texture changes.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So that for me was very traumatic. She used to lock me between her legs and I would scream. My father gave me a nickname. And that nickname carried on with me. He died in 2020. I went to see him in 2019 or 18. One of those two, because he lived in California. And he still called me that. And I was like, okay.
Oh my God.
Okay. The man was 90-something years old. I let him have it. But it stuck that long. And then since my mother was not able to handle my hair, 5th grade, she put a relaxer in it.
Yeah.
And then I started doing my own hair. But I always liked more ethnic hairstyles. I always liked braids. I always liked I call it freedom hair. And never let me have it. Never, because of that whole respectability politics, right?
Yeah.
In her. My grandmother used to dye and wear wigs all the time.
Wow.
My grandmother did not have her hair. My grandmother's hair was more in terms in line with the typical Black woman. And so it was, in this mishmash of a mix-up in the family, because nobody had what I had on my head at that time, living in the household. Now, my sisters were much better with hair, but they were older and had their own families and were living off. And just going with what my mom did, I would sneak off and get it braided or braid it myself. I learned how to cornrow in elementary school because she didn't do that. Her idea was braids here and one here. That was her idea of braids. Braided my hair. She made me take it out that night. It was put beads and tinfoil on the end. I'm now dating myself, right?
Yeah.
But there and braided my whole head, put the beads in the tinfoil. And she came home, she made me take it all out. And I said, but I asked you to braid my hair. I didn't know that's what it was going to look like. Take it out. And this was in the summer.
Wow.
So go to school or anything where she thought it wouldn't be appropriate. Then when I was in grad school, I remember it was a little bit later. I actually was an undergrad, and we were doing a workshop at the student club was doing a program at Virginia State, and it was about complexion. And we were talking about hair and as part of this conversation. And somebody yelled from the crowd, "I don't know what you're talking about. Look how straight your hair is."
Wow.
Now, I had a perm in it. And I said, I got to relax in my hair just like you do. She goes, "Oh, I didn't know that." And I'm like, but why would that even matter?
Right.
But after that, it bothered me so much, right? And made me feel even more insecure. I just went and cut it off.
Wow.
I didn't do a big shot, but I left about this much hair. I had one of them little cute fly dudes with that kind of a cut, because I got tired of hearing comments about, those good hair, bad hair comments, and people discrediting me and saying they already say that I was less Black because of my complexion, but now I'm lesser because my hair wasn't what they thought it should be. And so it was when I cut it all off and I let it grow back in that I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute. My hair I don't really need a relaxer. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And then I thought back and I realized it was because my mother couldn't handle my hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was things like that. And those kind of stories that we all had continued on. And that's why I got into doing this work. And because rather than seeing this conversation die, it seemed to be taking on new life.
Yeah, absolutely. A new way of being, especially, when we started getting into like the early 2000s and we were in the what we called back then the natural hair movement, right? And so there was new education that was needed, a new community that was needed. And so it was really, really important for us to kind of try to get back to that. But it's interesting that no matter if you are dark skinned with kinky hair, light skin with kinky hair, light skin with straighter hair, we all have a story.
Yeah.
We all have a story.
I think if people understand that at the end of this podcast, that's a step in the right direction. People have different stories.
Yeah.
And stories are painful for them.
Yes.
And
yes.
Careful, about talking about whose pain was worse. Pain was different.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Pain is different for different people, different experiences, but pain and trauma is pain and trauma.
Wow. So in your research, you stated adjectives used to describe Black hair included unmanageable, uncontrollable, kinky, nappy, wild, bushy, frizzy, rough, unruly, and curly. And again, these negative descriptions originated as a part of slavery and racism. Black hair had to be tamed, fixed, and controlled. A bad hair day was one where hair did not act or look right, in quotations, and white. Good hair was straight and manageable. It was smooth and soft. A good hair day meant that your hair was sleek. We are still talking about this sleekness. I'm so sick of it. I am so tired of it. Just recently, we had a situation in the media where people on Twitter were, bombarding Simone Biles and her new husband about the fact that her hair was not sleek enough on her wedding day. And I would love to hear about your thoughts on that. When I when I read that article, I was like, okay, Black people, we got to do better.
Yeah,
we have to do better.
Let me start with saying I loved her response. Right?
Yeah,
she's like, I don't care. They forget I live in Houston. I step outside and my edges it was the baby hair, right? That the edge, the baby hair that everybody's loving to do it just reverted. It curled up. And so what? I think the people had comments. My first thought, this isn't nice. And sometimes we got to check ourselves. So I had to check myself on this. My first thought was, again, this is a not nice comment. Oh, they must be jealous because she getting married and they ain't got a man.
Woo!
That was my first thought, right?
You gotta say it, Dr. Maria.
Yeah,
and a handsome one at that.
Yes.
And a wealthy one at that.
I like, stop
Yes.
hating on her.
Yes.
He wasn't gonna look at you if he didn't marry her. So what?
Right.
And then
Right.
he didn't. It wasn't bothering him.
Absolutely. He loved all of it. All of
Yes,
it.
yes, and they looked like they were so happy. Right?
Yes.
And that's what you should want is to see Black love like that, right?
Yes.
And not find
Yes.
ways to pick at it. And
Yes.
and I think people were picking at it. But it also reminded me, you remember Gabby Douglas and the job they did on
Yeah.
that girl, right?
Absolutely.
Gabby Douglas was
Absolutely.
16 years old, and they grown ass. Oh, sorry, am I supposed to say not that on the show?
That's okay.
Okay, these are grown ass women picking on this 16-year-old girl about her hair.
Yeah.
She was winning medals
Yeah.
in categories nobody had done. And that's what you want to pick at. We really, our trauma and our self-hate is so deep that we don't even know how to celebrate when we're doing something right.
We don't. We
And we're
don't.
doing something good. We find the fault in it because I think part of it is maybe it's a defense mechanism. Like if we don't find the fault, somebody else will. No, they don't know. We're picking at.
Wow. I almost guarantee you not one white person said that Simone Biles' edges was not slick enough. I'm sure. I'm almost certain that it was not. Not one white person had that to say.
Not at all.
Yeah, we need to do better. And it was when I first read the article, I was a little embarrassed. I was embarrassed for us as Black people because I'm like, as you mentioned, this is a time where we should be celebrating her and not pulling out our dirty laundry.
Look, our laundry's all over the street. And so it's unfortunately,
it absolutely is.
We threw it out there. And so as much as I hated to see it, I wasn't embarrassed by it because I try not to let other people's bad behavior embarrass me.
Yeah.
I try not to, but sometimes it's hard.
Yeah.
If I was in a group of people and maybe a mixed crowd company and they had said it, I might have been more embarrassed. But see,
right.
In print didn't have the same embarrassment for me.
That's true. Yeah.
And because she was basically, without saying she said, right?
Yeah.
Without using that language, that's what she said.
Yeah.
Live on our happy life, and it's going to be an FU every day.
Absolutely.
So. But yeah, when I saw it, I was like, yeah, come on, people, let's stop this again. And that's why I said there's more of it's coming back, and it's coming back stronger, right? Even after Gabby, when she got after, the first time when she won the Olympics and they criticized her, then she came out with something else and they criticized that, and then she came out with something else, and so the little girl was trying, right? And all folks did was keep coming at her, and she put on different. I don't want to jump ahead in the conversation.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
She at one point I think she had a weave, so then they criticized the weave. And anything she did wasn't good enough for them. It was like, what is she supposed to do?
Yeah. And look what she's doing. I mean, she's gonna be sweating. She's gonna be, it's a physical situation. Her hair is not gonna be sleek.
No. And Black women are quick to say they don't want to go to the gym because they're going to sweat out their curls, or they're going to sweat out their blowout, or their twist out, or their roots are going to get wet, and they don't want to go in the water. But we don't understand when an athlete, right, who is actually doing something all the time that would induce that has the challenge. We don't want to embrace that.
Well, see, I just published a book called Black Hair in a White World. It'll be coming out very soon. And in that book, I talk about quality of life and how Black women's quality of life, like, Black women that wear their hair natural have a very different quality of life than Black women who decide not to. And it's a freedom that oftentimes we don't like to talk about. As you mentioned, Black women that, have to wear blowout or decide that they want to wear a blowout, they don't go to the gym. They don't take care of themselves. We as Black women, many of us don't know how to swim because of our hair. I'm one of those Black women that don't know how to swim because of my hair. It's the way that we live our lives is so wrapped up in what we do with our hair. Yeah.
You said the name of your book is Black Women in a White World?
Black hair in a white world. Black hair in a white world. Yeah. I'll actually be in New York. I'm going to be coming for a book signing. I'll be in Harlem on the 28th, and then I'll be in Brooklyn on the 29th.
Of June?
Yeah, of July.
Okay.
Of
Oh,
July. Yeah,
okay.
of July. July 29th is International I Love Braids Day. And so I'll be at that festival. I'll be selling books and I'll be doing a lecture as
Okay.
well. Yeah, yeah. So hopefully, if you're in town, I would love for you to come down and meet me in person and I can sign a book for you.
I would love that. So make
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
me
Yeah.
as the logistics get more settled, let me know, please.
Okay, I will. I will. And so we are all very well aware that there are microaggressions that Black women face about their hair from non Black people. Let's talk a little bit about our Black men and
Mm.
how they act out their brainwashing in the lyrics of their songs and how they treat Black women. There are several artists in the music industry who talk about their preference for light skin and straight hair. BET published an article called Color Complex 30 Rap Lyrics that explains Little Kim's facial evolution. Oh, my word. The article discussed lyrics by Lil Wayne, Big Sean, Ghostface Killer, ASAP Rocky, Two Chains, Drake, Future, Game, Childish Gambino, Kanye West, Party Next Door, and Tupac. These are all men of power, prestigious men of power who discuss their preferences for light skin. Can you talk about the impact that brainwashing has had on Black heterosexual relationships?
Woo!
Deep, deep, honey.
Deep,
Deep.
painful, such a long history, right? So rooted in enslavement and respectability politics and this idea of a Eurocentric concept of beauty
Yeah.
and what it means to have arrived and and the idea of getting closer and closer to having that prize of the white woman, right? Because I think
Mhm.
Kanye in because I went and I wasn't familiar with the article beforehand before we had sent me some information, and when I went and found the article and Kanye's actually goes he says he wants white bitches, right?
Yeah.
And but also look at his marital choices and whatnot. But it's like I think part of having arrived, right, and being really accepted um, at a certain level is having a white wife. And if
Mhm.
you can't have the white wife, you get the closest thing you can to it. And that may be an ethnically ambiguous woman,
Absolutely.
be a light skinned Black woman. Um,
Mhm.
and it might, if you don't even get those, it might just be a lighter skinned Black woman than
Mhm.
from maybe where from you.
Right.
Because light is relative, right? What
Yeah.
some people consider and call light and red bone, other people may not consider light and red bone
Mhm.
because there are people lighter or people darker. It
Mhm.
depends. It's a spectrum,
Right.
and there's no distinct cutoff, right? That people say, okay, if you're right here, this on this side, this on this side. It doesn't matter who you're compared to. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
what the structure is. That doesn't exist. And there are people I've heard people who have called themselves light skin, and I look at them, I look at me, and I'm like, I'm sure
Oh
we
my gosh.
have stories, right? I'm sure we have different stories, and it's in a way that I'm like, I will be very honest. I've always had issues with my complexion because I didn't have enough melanin, right? I
Mm.
wanted to be browner. I'm the first one out. Even to this day, I'm the first one out there in the sun. And I try to
Mm.
prolong my tan as long as possible. And if
Mm.
with that pill that you could pop to get you a little darker, I'm
Wow.
right.
Wow.
That's me at this age. I still struggle with some of that. I'm way better
Mm.
than what I used to be. Way better. Um, but it's and part of that comes from people not being able to um accept where I am on the racial spectrum. And while I shouldn't care about that, when you get ostracized
Oh
or
yeah. Oh
not
yeah.
included because people don't think that you're Black. I remember being
Oh
in a
yeah.
line at the Shaggy concert, and some white women tried to cut in front of us, and I made a comment, and the girl behind me said, "Well, what are you talking about? That's your people." And I started to say something. I didn't have to. My girls jumped all over it first. And so it, and so things like that kind of stick with you, right? So that's not how I think. That's not how I see myself. That's not how I live. That's not the house I grew up in. Grew up in a Black household in a Black neighborhood. It's in Black schools. I mean, and I got it at Black schools and white schools. I sat there and had to listen to two white people argue over what I was. And the guy who was next to me, who was more ambiguous than I was, but he was still a brother. He looked at me and cracked up. We just laughed because it was ridiculous. But that was in ninth grade, and it's so that's where that comes from for me. So we're talking about this whole idea of complexion and having it impact relationships.
Oh yeah.
And I've dated brothers who are a range of complexions.
Yeah.
And I've had some that tell me we don't match because our complexions are so different.
Oh my word.
I dated one where he made a negative comment about brown skinned people. And I'm like, excuse me, you got to go. Because that doesn't mean all of my family's my complexion. And you have serious issues.
Right.
And so you see that this whole idea of colorism has left such a scar, right?
Oh my gosh.
And women.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. The beautiful, beautiful, dark, rich, dark sisters, some of the most beautiful women in the world.
Yeah.
And they are often overlooked because of their hue.
Yeah.
And sweetest women, biggest hearts, but they're treated a certain way.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have but then you also can flip the script, right? And you can have, just because somebody's light skin doesn't mean they're pretty, and it doesn't mean they're nice. Right?
That is so true. Absolutely.
Doesn't mean they're a nice person. Some of the meanest people are the closest, are white or the closest to white that I've encountered too.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. You were talking though, particularly about relationships. So I think when brothers get to a point where they have a preference. I won't say a preference. I don't care, people have preferences, right? Because you can be attracted to whoever you're attracted to. For me, it comes when you discount, right, somebody because of a complexion. When you downplay or criticize or talk negatively about somebody because of complexion, whether it's dark or whether it's light. Same thing with hair, whether your hair is nappy or whether it's straight. When you start talking about people and discrediting and dehumanizing and just kind of disqualifying their worth based on something physical, then you've got a serious issue.
Yeah.
Are attracted to some of the stuff they're attracted to, but when you only are attracted to one thing without acknowledging that there is beauty in others, then that really has come from some traumatic stuff.
Well, see, my issue with interracial relationships, and like you said, people can love and be attracted to whomever they want, but the issue that I have is when our brothers purposefully exclude us.
Yeah.
They purposefully exclude us. That's the issue that I have, is when we are purposefully excluded.
Do you remember years ago, Charles Barkley was quoted for saying something negative about Black women, and that's why he was married to a white woman. He said something negative about Black women, and he didn't date us. And we were like, we don't want you either, anyway. But yeah. I
don't remember that. Do you remember exactly what he said? What did he say?
Nope, but I got Google up, so I'll look for it.
While you're Googling it, you know what? Something came to my mind. When I was in college, I was a junior in college. There was this guy on the football team, and I have my own issues with people that were athletes. But this particular gentleman was on our Kent State University football team. And he pursued and pursued and pursued. And I finally started dating him. We started dating. He had the nerve to tell me, once we kind of got into the quote unquote relationship, you know, you're the darkest girl I've ever dated. And I just looked at him like, Okay. I'm like, well, why are you dating me? Well, I knew that you were such a wonderful person and I didn't want to pass you up just because of your skin complexion. I'm
Wow.
like, so you're doing me a favor.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. I see you. And he was much darker than me. Much darker. And talking about I'm the darkest woman that he'd ever dated. I'm like, okay. And as you know, I mean, that relationship didn't last. Yeah. But it's so interesting.
Time for me to get set up with your.
Oh, go ahead. Go
All
ahead.
right. No. I clicked on the wrong thing. I was looking at the Charles Barkley thing, and it brought up a YouTube thing. I'm like, oh, I don't want that.
Okay.
I'm still looking for it. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So it's so interesting to me how the brainwashing leads to so much hurt on the part of each other, us hurting each other. Even sometimes too, unconsciously we hurt each other.
Yeah.
We don't know that we're hurting each other, but that brainwashing is so deep that we don't think twice about hurting each other based on what we believe society's ideal beauty is all about. And so, yeah. So after he told me that I was the darkest girl that he ever dated, I was like, okay, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Because I'm just he told me the rationale, because I asked him, I was like, well, where did you get that from? He was from Florida, and his grandmother taught him that he needed to give his children a break because he was so dark. Isn't that deep?
Oh, and that poor baby was hurt, and he didn't even understand his own
Yes.
trauma, right? He didn't understand his own trauma.
His grandmama said, "Give your children a break. Don't date a dark skinned girl like you."
Yeah.
That's deep. That's
Well,
deep.
that's like folks who were told don't be out in the sun too much. You still have
Yeah.
people who don't sit in the sun or sit under an umbrella and a hat, and it's not to protect themselves from sun damage, because they won't
Right.
go at all, right? It's because
Right.
they'll say, I don't want to get any darker, and it's like, okay, and I'm like, can you rub it off on me, because I want it.
Did you find it? You
No,
found
I
it?
didn't, but
Okay.
I will find a few. It was a while ago.
Hmm.
Um,
But is he? Do you know if is he still married to a white woman?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. So let's keep the conversation going. So,
Okay.
um, this particular topic is something that a lot of times Black people really don't want to talk about, particularly Black women. We don't want to face the reality that we are truly compromising our authenticity as Black people. Yes. And I just actually had this conversation with someone. I was on someone's podcast yesterday. We did a recording and we were talking about this topic. And she was, saying, well, yeah, Black women wear wigs for lots of different reasons. And they do. Black women wear weaves or wigs for a plethora of reasons. Maybe that person is suffering from alopecia. Maybe the person has wearing a wig, maybe as a quote unquote protective style, or many other reasons why they wear them. But in your article, and this was also just very well, I mean, like the way that you broke this down was just like, okay, people, we got to see this. So in your article you discussed the fact that the polarizing concept of good and bad hair is something that still haunts the Black community and is evident in the booming hair care industry that offers a plethora of products to straighten, control, manage our hair, as well as the excessive variety of silky smooth, Hawaiian silky, Brazilian wavy, straight bundles that are available in beauty supply stores. I would love to hear your thoughts about Black women's rationale for wearing weaves and wigs.
You gonna get me in trouble.
We gonna both be in trouble, honey. We gonna both be in trouble.
But I'm gonna go there anyway. So I think we wear, so we've always done things to our hair, right?
Yeah,
We've always adorned it, we've always colored it, that we've always done a lot of stuff to our hair.
Yeah.
And the idea, the versatility of Black hair that people don't recognize makes it so we can do things. And so I think you have two different sets of people who use weaves and wigs, right?
Yeah.
I think you have the set that uses them to change up their hair. Right? They're like, okay, today I want straight, tomorrow I want curly, today I got a fro, tomorrow I got wig. and they people know, right? They you playing with your hair. You got
Yeah.
braids one day, you got twists the next. It's that's what you got. You change it up, and then you have the set. I think of people who think that using these things, the wigs and the weaves, enhance them, right?
Yeah.
Make them more acceptable or make
Yeah.
them prettier. And they usually go for these straight and the silky Hawaiians. Most people don't go get Afro weaves, right?
Oh
Uh,
no. Oh,
Afro,
absolutely not.
you will see, look at the big curly ones, right? But a lot of them, and I'm gonna say this, and okay, get mad at me if y'all want. It's all right. I'll tell you how to yell at me at the end of the show. Um, I think the people who only get the straight ones are getting them because there's a little bit of I don't want to say self-hate, but there's a little bit of that they don't like the hair that they have, or they
Mhm.
don't know to manage the hair they have. Again, there's two groups. So I'm talking
Yeah.
about not the group that's doing it to change it up and it's likes their hair and
Right.
just likes the change and the
Right. Right.
versatility and the ease.
Right.
And perhaps they are into the sports and
Right.
what have you, and it makes it easier. That's one group of people. But then
Yeah.
you've got the other group of people who and we see them on the streets all the time, that there ain't no way that they can think that we don't know that that's not their hair,
Right.
right? Because it's like this on their head and they walking down the street and it's like the root is one texture and one color, and then here's another texture and another color, and not deliberate, right? Because there's
Right.
some styles that is deliberate. And I think if sometimes I see people, and I try not to judge, but we are human, right? And so we have comments and conversations in our
Yeah.
heads that are
Yeah.
judging, and the key is not to let them out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes I see them and I look and I say, Doesn't somebody love her enough? One of her friends, one of her
Ooh.
girls, one of her mama, her dad,
Whoa.
maybe her mama and daddy do it. Maybe the girls do the same,
Wow.
just to let her know it's time to get it redone, or
Right.
right, or because we just leave it. We just leave it. Rather than have our hair out, we just leave it beyond the time it's supposed to be left. I braid my hair up. I braid my hair up a lot, and I
Mhm.
get extensions when I get
Yeah. Yeah.
my hair braided. And last summer I had my hair braided, and I asked the lady who did it for one thing, and she gave me something totally different, and I didn't like it, but I wasn't taking it out right away, right? But I knew I had to take it out. I couldn't leave it in as long as I left everything else in, because one of my girls, who I love dearly, she's like, "Don't do that again. Don't get that stuff." No, right? I didn't thought I liked it or something. I hated it, but I
Yeah.
just didn't want to take my. I just paid to get it done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have to last at least a couple weeks before I can take it.
Yeah.
But it was like, but she loved me enough to tell me, don't do that
Yeah.
again.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
so, and I love her for that. And
Yeah.
so it's like you want to we I would hope that when folks hair looks that way, that there's somebody who loves them enough to pull their coattail, because everybody's
Yeah.
looking at it and everybody is judging it,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think weaves and wigs are more acceptable when, and here I go falling into the trap too, though, right?
Mm.
But when I think they don't look um like they're not on your head, like they're not yours, like they're a creature, like there's something put on your head, right? So, and I don't want to say presentable, but it's when it looks like it's not, like, like, where's the cat? Here's the cat on my head, right? I know I'm
Yeah.
gonna get roasted. I know, but
That's funny.
this is not that group of people who use it because they like to switch up their hair, and it's they play with it, and they
Mhm.
and it's not the group of people who have medical conditions, or
Yeah.
are going through chemo, or
Right. Right.
whatever. This is not that group.
Yeah. Right.
And
Right.
we all, whether we want to admit it or not, we all know the group that I'm talking about. We
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
all because we
They
all
don't.
see.
Yeah. They don't value their beauty enough to leave it unmasked.
Yeah, yeah.
They mask their beauty, and they do it with the long wigs. They do it with the big lashes. They do it with all the makeup.
Oh, we'll talk about lashes.
Oh my gosh.
The caterpillars.
Oh my gosh. I call them snuffleupagus lashes. You remember the Snuffleupagus from
Yes.
Sesame Street?
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's, that's when it hurts me the most.
Yeah.
Is
But
when
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
when I see us masking ourselves. That's when it hurts me.
Yeah. And I feel bad us even having this conversation because I feel like we're slipping into the trap, right, of judging and talking
Mm,
doing
mm,
this.
mm.
And we are
Yeah.
guilty of what we're talking about this
Yeah.
whole show. Um, and I'm not going to say, but we are guilty of it.
Yeah.
The thing is, I think we're trying to make people understand, right, that these added things aren't making you more beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Distracting from who you are.
Yeah.
Other
Yeah.
folks loving you enough to tell you. We're
Yeah.
telling you, right? We're
Yes.
telling you. And again, it's not everybody. There,
Right.
there are different reasons for different things, and
Mhm.
we're talking about the cases where it's more, I'd say, blatant, that it is being used to try to do something that it's not doing.
Yeah. To mask.
Yeah.
To mask. Yeah. Many people oftentimes ask me where I think the Black hair industry is going. I've had that question asked to me several times, where Black relationships might be going. And so I'm going to ask you, where do you see the future of Black hair?
So the black hair industry in particular, right? It's a
Yeah,
$2.5 billion industry.
right.
$2.5 billion. Global extensions by next year will be 2.6 billion. And
Oh
that's
my
just
word.
extensions, globally, extensions alone, right? 2.6. Um,
Hmm.
it's going to keep growing and growing and growing. So, knowing that, I think we need to make sure that if this is what people are going to do, if people are going to continue to use these things, right? Products for black hair. I think they said the average woman spends about $60 a month on hair products
Mm.
alone.
Just products alone. Wow.
Um, that's not counting weaves. That's not counting extensions. Not counting getting braids. That's not counting,
Hmm.
other stuff. And so, if those are the numbers, and if we are spending that much of our income, right, on black hair products, then we need to be part of that industry because we
Hmm.
are not the majority.
No,
There,
we're
there
not.
are some small black businesses and black owned lines, right? But some of them sell out.
They
Um,
do.
what's that line? Well, Carol's Daughters is no longer black owned.
I know.
Nubian Heritage is no longer black owned.
Yeah.
Um, there was another one that Shea Moisture is no longer black owned. Um,
And it's that's such a touchy subject because I get it.
yeah, me
When
too.
I get it. When people, present you with the offer that you can't refuse,
Mhm.
and I mean, a lot of times we build businesses to sell the business,
Yeah,
but it's so disheartening when we see that we lose control.
yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
will say, in the case of Shea Moisture, they sold it in order to buy Essence back. Right.
Mm.
So there was a motivation behind that to get
Mhm,
the
mhm.
magazine back to us,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But even without selling the black owned businesses, let's say you look at the white businesses, they are jumping in with black hair, black products, right? Lines that are targeting just black women and black hair. You see it. What is it? Revlon has a line. Um, I think all the major ones have
Mhm,
now lines for curly hair. They didn't care about any curly haired white ladies, right?
mhm.
So now because you see how much we are spending on hair products, you want to jump on the bandwagon.
Well, you know what? Historically, that's how it's always been.
Yeah.
I can think back to the early 1900s where there was a company called Lucky Brown. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember Lucky Brown. If you
No.
don't know Lucky Brown, people that are watching, please look up Lucky Brown. Lucky Brown was one of the very first white companies to sell and cater products to the Black community. They called their company Lucky Brown because if you wore their products, so they had skin bleaching creams and they also had hair straightening products.
Okay.
So if you were to wear their products, then you would be a lucky brown person because they will help you assimilate.
Oh,
So
wow.
since the 1900s, white companies have been catering their products to Black people. And the start of that happened after Madam C.J. Walker got some fame. Then that's when they started jumping on the bandwagon.
Yep. All right. That's something else for me. Thank you for sharing that with me. I was not familiar
You're welcome. Yeah, Lucky Brown. Yeah.
with
You will see, like, if you just type on Google, type Lucky Brown hair ads.
them. Mm-hmm.
The hair ads are so interesting. Um, I had curated an exhibition a couple years ago. The exhibition was called Textures, the History and Art of Black Hair.
Mm-hmm.
And I desperately was trying to find one of the posters from the Lucky Brown Company, and I could not find it. There was this one particular poster that they had that I really, really wanted. And the poster, across the top of the poster, was the main two characters that they had on their product was a Black man and a Black woman. So this Black man and Black woman, dark skin, had curly hair. At the top of the poster, it said, "Their love could not last." On the bottom of the poster, it showed them after they used the Lucky Brown products, their skin was lighter and their hair was straight. Their love can last forever. That's deep.
That is
We
really.
were being trained from the very beginning that our beauty wasn't good enough. It wasn't even good enough for us to stay
No.
together and love each other.
No. Wow.
That's deep.
It is.
And it's unfortunate that we're still today, 2023, that we're still dealing with this. We're still hurt by it. We're still dealing with it.
Yeah. It's look,
You
that
know,
post-traumatic slave syndrome mentality is real.
it is real. It is
Trauma is in
absolutely
our
real.
DNA. It's in our DNA. People don't want to believe it. They want
I
to say, "Oh,
know
way," but it is.
it is. It's very, very real. Very, very real. And so my final questions to you is: have we discussed anything that, or have we missed anything? Anything that you would like to discuss that we did not discuss?
Um, no, I think we kind of covered a lot of stuff, right? A
Yeah,
lot of good
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah,
It's I don't know. It's I think it's sad that society places so much value on our hair texture,
mm-hmm,
so that we place so much value on our hair
mm-hmm,
texture.
mm-hmm,
I think it's
mm-hmm,
sad that society places so much value on our complexions, so we place so much value on our complexion.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And like I said, it affects all of us. And even, even in this even in our conversations, right? We some of our conversations, if it was taken out of context, people would say we're doing the same things, even though
Right,
we have a context for it, right? And and
right,
and and we're that was not our intention. Um, but it's because it's so triggering for so many people. But at
mm-hmm.
the same time, our hair has always been a source of pride for us.
Yeah,
It's always been a source of pride.
yeah,
And on the continent, it was a source of pride.
right,
But it was a source
absolutely.
of pride our crowns, whether we had hair or didn't have hair,
Yeah, yeah,
whether it was braided, whether it was locked, whether it was whatever
yeah,
it was still a source of pride. The pride didn't come from having a particular texture. It
right.
came from more of a style
Mm-hmm,
connected to the culture, or
mm-hmm,
like we said in the beginning, our social status,
mm-hmm.
um, our family connections, our marital status.
Yeah,
And it wasn't negative if it was one versus another. It was
yeah,
more to identify,
yeah,
right? And to
yeah.
recognize. And if we could get back to that kind of a communal and respective relationship
Yeah,
with our hair and our crowns as a whole, right?
yeah,
Whether they have hair on them or not, right? Um, I think that we would see the needle move on the other things that we struggle with, because
oh yeah,
they're all interconnected, and we need the needle to move.
we do, we
We need
do.
to move. I think with the Crown Act being passed by so many places, the needle's moving a little bit. I when we see the outrage, right, that happens when our young Black children are assaulted in schools by the cutting of their hair or the restyling of their hair, and then there's such a backlash against the person who does it. That's moving the needle a little bit, right? And because the people that are having their hair that are getting having these assaults on their bodies, right? Like the young wrestler with the locks, and the young girl who had gone to school and wasn't able to go to her graduation, as well as the other young man who couldn't go to his graduation if he didn't cut his hair. He refused. Those attacks are not on straight hair. Right? Those attacks are not on permed hair. They're on hair that's furthest from whiteness. And people are supporting, right, these students and these young people with their hair furthest from whiteness. And that is a nice tide change for us.
Yeah, it is. It is.
If we can keep that momentum going in a way that it accepts and embraces all hair.
Yeah.
Because our hair comes in all different shapes, sizes, textures, whatever. You can be the lightest woman with a nappy head, and you can be the darkest with a straight or curly head. Our ancestors our ancestry shows up whether we want it or not. Right? And it shows up how it wants to show up. So I think if we can get to a place where we can respect and even not just respect, but accept. Right. Respect and accept what comes out of our head in a way that lets our true beauty shine. I think it'd be kind of awesome. And people that's, and again, it's not taking away from wearing weaves and wigs, right? It's the mentality behind it. And it's the let's say the mentality, let's say the motivations behind it.
Absolutely.
Motivations behind it. It's because if it's out of self-hate, then there's an issue. Serious issue. I think when it's not out of self-hate, then I think you see people I think you see, I'm just gonna say it, you see better weaves. Really, really bad weaves, right? The ones like they and I don't want to say home jobs, because there's some people who do some amazing hair at home. I don't want to say that because that's a whole nother issue and about us getting and that's all economic and policy driven, right? That's a whole different narrative. But if it looks like a 5-year-old put it in, right, that's not helping you, and it's not helping. Then that's not coming from a place where somebody is really in a positive spot. I think it's more of I got to get something to cover it up, and I'll take whatever I can get, kind of a mindset, and that's heartbreaking.
It breaks my heart. But thank you. This conversation was beautiful. I really appreciate it. And so how can people stay connected to you?
Okay, so my IG is at historydoc, HISTORY 1, the number 1. So it's historydoc1.
Okay. Historydoc1, and I'll make sure that when this is all on YouTube and everything, I'll make sure I put it in the description. History.1.
Doc. Okay. HISTORYDOC.
Oh, DOC. Doc 1. Okay. Okay. All right. Well,
y'all don't crash my page because you're mad about something I said, please.
You know what? Let me tell you something.
Dr.
Maria. When I first started this work, I was an academic, like I mentioned before. And I decided that it was time for me to leave academia to focus on this full time. I wanted to rebrand myself and to rebrand up the podcast that I had started. And the title, Black Beauty Activist, was what I really felt in my heart, but I was really, really afraid to come out in that way. because a lot of people just don't want to hear.
No.
They don't want to hear it. And I remember talking to a friend of mine, and she said to me, I had two mentors. And I always talk about the importance of having mentors in your life. If you don't have a mentor in your life, you are not growing.
Yeah.
You know? And so I talked to two of my mentors about it. And one of my mentors, a woman, told me, she said, you know what? You know who you are? I said, who? She said, you're Jonah in the whale. You're running from what you're really supposed to be doing. It's time for you to come out of the whale. So she called me Jonah. Okay. And so I talked to another one of my mentors, and I said, I'm really thinking about doing this, but I'm so afraid of people seeing me as a radical. And my mentor said, you're already a radical. You're just an undercover radical.
Right.
It's time to come out.
Yeah.
It's time to come out, because I'm coming out because I love our people.
Yes.
And that's the main thrust behind it is love. It's
Yeah.
all in love.
It hurts, but
It
it's
does. It does. But it's
the
all in
tough
love.
conversations, right?
Yeah. It's all in love. Yeah. And so you're right. People, they may be very upset with us, with this conversation, but we want us to be better. I want us to be better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
Absolutely.
I do. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking your time to speak with me this evening. I so appreciate it. It was wonderful to get to know you. And
Well, thank you
hopefully,
for inviting
yeah,
me. We'll stay in touch, and I'll
absolutely.
see you in July.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye. Oh my gosh, that was such a good conversation. Oh my gosh. Well, you all know that it is such an important thing to me, especially as a researcher, to always bring to you some information about how I got prepared for these conversations. And so I'm going to put on the screen. This is Dr. Maria's article that I read that really intrigued me about her and the work that she was doing. So please go on Google, go on, whatever search engine you use, and type in Misogynoir, Black Hair, Identity Politics and Multiple Black Realities by Dr. Maria DeLongoria. And another piece of research that I picked up was the book by Moya Bailey. And Moya, as I mentioned before, she's the one who coined the term misogynoir, which means misogyny that is catered, or I shouldn't say catered, misogyny that is aimed toward Black women. And so this particular book is called Misogynoir Transform Black Women's Digital Resistance by Moya Bailey, the author, of course, who coined the term misogynoir. The text reveals some critical information about how Black women are seen in the digital world. And Dr. Bailey wrote, misogynoir impacts so many different facets of Black women's lives, but health, Black women's very right to life. It is an essential vantage point from which to gauge its deleterious effects, basically talking about, like, how we're deleting part of our being. Okay, so memes circulate through social media platforms that delete Black women as, or that depict Black women as more ugly, dirty, deficient, hypersexual, and unhealthy than their white or non-Black women of color counterparts. As a result, Black women are attempting to redress the negative impact of stereotypes in their lives and on their health. So please pick that book up. It's a great book. And as I often will say, oftentimes degrading comments are coming directly from our Black community. Not to say that non-Black people say degrading things, but it's even more hurtful when it's coming from our own community. And so again, as Black people, we face so much brainwashing that has to be undone. And so I digress on that topic. But this particular episode of the Black Beauty Activist podcast was brought to you by my book. And I was mentioning in it to Dr. Maria, my book that's going to be coming out and being dropped on in July. Is actually the date is actually now July 3rd. It's actually going to all the way be released on National Crown Act Day, which is July 3rd. So Black Hair in a White World. If you have not picked up your copy, make sure that you get your copy today. I will be doing a book tour with this particular text, and I'll be going to lots of different cities around the United States. So please, 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 if you're in New York and if you want to hang out and see me get a book signed, I'll be there the 28th and the 29th. I'll be in DC on National Crown Act Day. Please come through to the Sankofa bookstore, and I'll be there signing books. But this particular book is a work, and it was a work that was 4 years in the making work. And I'm so proud of this book. I'm hoping that it's going to change lots of people's lives. And it surely, in the process of writing the book, changed my life and allowed me to get a deeper understanding of who I am as a Black woman. And so if you enjoyed this episode of the Black Beauty Activist podcast, please make sure that you like it on YouTube, share it with your circles who will benefit, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Black Beauty Activist. Always remember, on the other side of fear is your beautiful confidence. Have a good night, everybody.